So usually I don't really annoy myself with the argument of right-wing Christians in America, but I found a tweet just looking back through some old stuff on the internet that really got under my skin. It was by Ben Shapiro. Now, it's not a new claim, but it's just him talking about how the West and the United States is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. So I have some quotes from what he said like at various times. It's mostly last year. So in 2017 in Knoxville, he said to a crowd that the first fundamental basis of Western civilization is the idea that each of us and every one of us is made in the image of God. So this is the guy who claims facts don't care about your feelings, and he's talking about how we're all made in the image of God, like it's a fact. No, that's your feeling. It's the feelings of lots of people like you, but it's not a fact. And then on Christmas 2017, he tweeted, "Merry Christmas, and thank God America is a nation founded on Judeo-Christian ideals. May that truth never change." So earlier in the year when Trump visited Poland, someone tweeted, "Trump did a speech in Poland and spoke about Western values. Now we all know what Western is a code word for, don't we?" And then Ben Shapiro responded, "Yes, Judeo-Christian, you know, the civilization that protects your freedoms." I get really pissed off so many people look up to this guy because he's so prominent for some reason, but he just talks utter bullshit. Like, believing that the West and America is founded on Judeo-Christian principles is just so ridiculous. And I'm going to break it down in various different ways, but just the notion like it's all based on Christianity, it's just something that, you know, religious people always have this feeling they're superior to everyone, whether it's Muslim fundamentalists or Christians in this instance. They think everything good in society must come from their religion, but I'm going to show how this whole Judeo-Christian thing was invented after World War II just to sort of project American supremacy on the world stage. So let's start historically and go back in time to before Christianity, because a lot of Christians and religious people believe that the world was totally immoral and had no principles without Christianity. Now, this is a time when Judaism is a minor religion, and it's very obscure to most of the world. It's only in Judea where the Jews only follow it, and it's not spread anywhere, and that's because, you know, Jews are very insular and it's not about converting everyone. They believe they're the chosen people of God. So the dominant religions of the time were the Romans and the Greeks with their polytheism, you know, believing in people like Mars, Jupiter, or Zeus and Poseidon, all these people. And this is what I want to get at, is that these societies didn't have Christianity or Judaism, but they were still moral in their own ways, and a lot of what they started is the foundation for Western civilization today. And I'll show which mechanisms people use to bring it back to this sort of mindset that was in antiquity. Now, what if I told people like Ben Shapiro the concept of human rights and morality goes back way further than Christianity? In fact, the UN's own human rights is based on something from antiquity. So the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon 2,500 years ago. And when he conquered the city, he put something into law which many consider the first basis of modern human rights today. In something found way later called the Cyrus Cylinder, he granted individual and religious freedoms to all those living within his empire. Now, this is just one instance of antiquity having morals that people like Ben Shapiro would say is indicative of our Western Judeo-Christian culture today. And I just want to even cast this further into doubt by bringing up other examples. Antiquity had all these philosophers like Plato and others who would talk about morality and happiness and everything like that. And this was way before Christianity came into the mainstream. And just think about these societies, you know, Rome and Greece, and think about what they represented in their time. Think about the democracies they represented, and think about how we sort of harken back to them a lot of the time today. So America's own system, what does that look like to most people? You have the Senate, yeah, and you have the president, who's sort of like, you know, the emperor or something like that. And the Senate is obviously harking back to ancient Rome. It's based on that, and this is thanks to the period of Enlightenment and the Renaissance to some extent. So the Renaissance just comes after the Dark Ages, and it's Europe looking back to antiquity and sort of saying, yeah, a lot of this stuff was pretty good, we should try and bring it back. And a lot of people associate this with arts, but it also manifests itself in politics, and you have figures like Machiavelli becoming prominent, you have lots of Italian republics becoming really, really prominent in this time, and it just sort of, people rejecting, you know, religious fundamentalism and trying to go back to the ways of antiquity. Because people like Ben Shapiro, when you're talking about Judeo-Christian heritage, think about what Christianity did to Europe for about 1,000 years before the Renaissance, and even after. You know, so Christianity was, you know, plunged Europe into the Dark Ages. You know, monarchies, fundamentalist Christianity, the Inquisition, the Crusades, everything like that in the medieval period was just adhering to fundamentalist Christianity. And what was really moral about burning gays, heretics, heathens, having crusades against various Christian sects, having crusades against the Muslims? You know, what is very moral about that? How is that the foundation of our morals? Do you think we just kept evolving with the monarchy till then? No, you had things like the Renaissance, which made people question. They questioned, you know, if this was the right way to live. And when you get to the Reformation, where many people challenged the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church, you know, Martin Luther publishing the Bible in German so people can read it for themselves and not just take what the church say, you know, saying you don't have to have the Vatican, you don't have to have a pope, it has to be more austere. And this challenged more notions of Christianity. So it was evolving. It wasn't just the monarchies that were set up and then that was it. So this is evolving even more. But then we come to the Enlightenment, you know, late 1600s to about the early 1800s, and this was primarily led by deists and atheists, people who were trying to get away from fundamentalist Christianity. You know, America and France, these two new republics, were not found on Christianity, and this is this bullshit that right wing in America particularly always peddle. I'm going to go into the founding fathers' religious beliefs to show they didn't want America to be this theocracy. They didn't want it to be founded on Judeo-Christian principles. So I was reading a great article that outlined it all perfectly. So I'll go through it right now. So George Washington is the most prominent founding father, obviously, but he's not a fundamentalist Christian. In fact, most people say he's a deist. Now, deists believed in a God, but didn't necessarily see him as active in human affairs. The God of the deists was a God of first cause. He set things in motion and then stepped back. Washington often employed deistic terms. His God was a supreme architect of the universe. Washington saw religion as a necessary for good moral behaviour, but didn't necessarily accept all Christian dogma. He seemed to have a special gripe against communion and would usually leave services before it was offered. So again, he's an unconventional Christian. He's not, you know, what Ben Shapiro is making out. He's like founding the country on Christian principles. He doesn't even agree with a lot of it. So John Adams, another prominent founding father, was a Unitarian, and then he was raised as a Congregationalist and never officially left the church. But he rejected the belief in the Trinity and the divinity of Jesus, core concepts of Christian dogma. In his personal writings, Adams makes it clear that he considered some of Christian dogma to be incomprehensible. In February 1756, Adam wrote in his diary about a discussion he had had with a man named Major Green. Green was a devout Christian who sought to persuade Adams to adopt conservative Christian views. The two argued over the divinity of Jesus and the Trinity. Questions on the matter of Jesus' divinity, Green fell back on the old standby. Some matters of theology are too complex and mysterious for we puny humans to understand. Adams was not impressed, and in his diary he wrote, "Thus mystery is made as a convenient cover for absurdity." And I really like that quote because it just shows about the whole of religion, to be honest, even though, you know, he's saying he is religious. But, you know, imagine a politician in America, because atheists don't get elected to office in America. Imagine someone saying what John Adams said, and he's a founding father. Is America really founded on Christian principles? So Thomas Jefferson, another, you know, really, really famous president and founding father. So this article also point out, his skepticism of traditional Christianity is well established. Our third president did not believe in the Trinity, the virgin birth, the divinity of Jesus, the resurrection, original sin, and other core Christian doctrines. He was hostile to many conservative Christian clerics whom he believed had perverted the teachings of Jesus. Now, most Christians in America believe all that stuff. Most politicians, you couldn't get them to denounce most of the stuff that Thomas Jefferson denounced. He's a founding father and one of the most famous presidents, and he denounced the divinity of Jesus, the virgin birth, the resurrection. Can you imagine Donald Trump doing that, or Barack Obama? No, you can't. And this has caused so much bullshit on stupid Ben Shapiro's arguments and others like him that it's founded on Christian principles when the founding fathers didn't believe the core tenets of Christianity. It's fucking stupid and insane. It just pissed me off so much. How can you be so oblivious to your own history? People always get at me in the comments, you're British and you don't understand American history. Well, people you look up to like Ben Shapiro, they don't even understand their own history. So don't get at me saying, oh, because you're British, I understand. Why does that make a difference if I understand or not? Read your own fucking constitution and read what your founding fathers wrote in their diaries and talked about, and you understand that Christianity is not a founding principle of America or places like France. The Enlightenment isn't driven by Christian fundamentalism. So, going on, Jefferson once famously observed to Adams, and the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus, by the Supreme Being as his father in the womb of the Virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. And I wish this was true, because he's basically saying, as we progress further, he's not saying about all religion, he's saying the myths of the Bible will become like the myths of, you know, the Roman gods and the Greek gods and the Norse gods. And I hope one day that becomes true and we do just leave God and Jesus and Muhammad and Moses and whatever, and Abraham, we leave them all behind and we're just like, yeah, those were gods of people at this certain time. It's obviously bullshit. Because that also, another thing that pisses me off is that we think our God, you know, our God in terms of the Western God, people like Ben Shapiro, obviously I don't believe in it. We think we're special because we believe in him, but how the hell is he different to, you know, Odin, Thor, you know, Loki, you know, like I said, Mars, Jupiter, all these people, Zeus? He's not different. And I really like this quote from Jefferson, and obviously he's not talking about everything, but it sums up how different he fucking was, and he's not founding the country on Christian principles. Jefferson even edited the New Testament and took away the miracles of Jesus. Imagine if Donald Trump or Obama did that, but here's one of the founding fathers and one of the presidents doing it. One of the, the people who founded the country that you say is based on Christian principles is doing something most Christians today couldn't get away with in America. This whole thing here just casts doubt on America being founded on Christian values. But what about the Constitution that says freedom of religion? Church and state is meant to be separate, even though America has completely gone backwards. And that's thanks to people like Eisenhower putting "In God We Trust" on the coin, and military propaganda making God and patriotism synonymous when it didn't used to be. And also, are we really going to go over Christianity's role in American history? Are we going to talk about the genocide of the Native Americans, Manifest Destiny, all that shit, which people use Christianity to justify? Are we going to talk about the way they enslaved black people and use the Bible to justify it? That's the role Christianity has to play in America. That's what your society is based on. Christianity being legitimising slavery, legitimising secession from the United States. That's what Christianity has done for America. And let's not even get into Christianity's role in creating modern racism. So, for many of you that don't know, racism hasn't always been around. There's been different forms. It's more been like, prejudice. Romans hated different cultures. They thought they were superior. But it's not exactly racist. And even into late medieval period, it's not racist. It's linked to religion, and this is what it really starts to birth modern religion. So, when the Spanish settled in the New World, they started taking African slaves, and when they worked the native population to death. But what they did to the native population is that they didn't kill them for being heathens, because they said that they hadn't seen God, they hadn't been taught about Jesus, so they're innocent, they're like children, so we can educate them, they're fine. But because the African savages had known about Christianity and rejected it, that means they should be enslaved and worked to death, and they're basically worthless because they've rejected Christ. And that's the role Christianity has to play in the transatlantic slave trade and modern racism. Black people are savages because they rejected Christianity. And this plays into America. You get fundamentalist Puritans coming from Europe, coming from England, that are too crazy to be in England, which isn't, in a time of Oliver Cromwell, it's still too, much for people like him. They go to America, settle, and, this is the foundation of America in some ways. Insane Christianity, but then you get Enlightenment ideals, which it did in a lot of Europe, sweeping America through the founding fathers, and that's what the country is founded on. It got hijacked in a lot of ways by the Christian right, like it has today, but it's not founded on Christianity. It's founded on, like I said, deism, of not imposing a theocracy on a country, democracy, which harkens back to Rome and Greece, not to the monarchical period of Europe, This is why it's just such a bullshit argument. And there's one last thing I want to touch on. Judeo-Christian is a really, really modern term, and it came after the Holocaust. Now I want to explain to you why they suddenly started putting Judeo instead of just Christian, because it was Christian for most of the time, but only after the Second World War they started making it Judeo-Christian. So this whole nonsense about Judeo-Christian morals comes into the mainstream thanks to President Eisenhower using it in a speech in 1952, and it's largely because of this new world order that constitutes Israel, the West, and this whole Western country. Israel is more advanced and civilized and democratic than the rest of the Arab world and the rest of the Muslim world and the communist world, so it's part of our Western collective. But this completely ignores the history of Christianity and Judaism. Throughout the medieval period and much, much later, Christians blamed Jews for killing Jesus. In fact, in the Crusades, the first one, Peter the Hermit led a people's crusade of peasants, and they went through Hungary, slaughtering any Jews they could find because he killed Jesus. And let's not even get into the other stuff like Spain, France, England, all expelling the Jews. And even the countries that remained, they were completely persecuted. And then talk about Nazi Germany, where Hitler used the New Testament, like the Peter the Hermit's group of crusaders had done. He used the New Testament to influence German Christians and say, the Jews killed Jesus, this is why we should, enact laws against them. How much Germans knew about what was going on in the concentration camps is up for debate still, but, he used this against them. So this whole bullshit that these two groups have been linked together, forever, and it's all their values, is completely different, and also lacks complete nuance, because Christianity and Judaism are completely different. Think about how violent the Old Testament is. Think about how all these insane things in the Bible, like killing gay people, incest is okay, slavery is okay, that's all in the Old Testament. So I'm not saying that Jews are worse because of that, or they follow that, you know, fundamentally, and they enslave people and all this stuff. But I'm saying it's completely different from the New Testament. So to say somehow their morals and everything are combined, no, that's just not true. It's just a modern construct, and it's helped by people in the Israel lobby, helped by a lot of prominent Jews in America. It just becomes way more palatable. You say Judeo-Christian values, you link it. Because obviously Judaism came first, and then Christianity hijacked it and put its own stuff in with Jesus. But at the end of the day, they just used it since they've become massive allies with the Israelis. Because before that, I'm not sure how many of you were, there was a great Twitter thread about it, that the US turned away so many Jewish immigrants in World War II, and most went back and got killed in concentration camps. Is that your shared Judeo-Christian morals? You know, where you refuse Jews from coming into your country and send them back to certain death. That's your shared morals? No. And anyone can see, it's just because of Israel and our relationship with Israel today, you know, UK as well. That's why we talk about Judeo-Christian morals. And, you know, Israel's palatable now because we've got a nice base and a nice ally in the Middle East, even though most of our countries, England and the US, have absolutely hated Jews for most of our history. Most countries have hated Jews. But, you know, now we all have Judeo-Christian morals because they're such a great ally to us. And this is what annoys me about people like Ben Shapiro. Just people take him so seriously, but just to say this so confidently, like that's what I'm saying. I've done a history degree, right? And I'm not saying I'm more intelligent than him, but I know myself when it comes to history. And I've studied this loads, especially the medieval period and religion particularly. I've done so much in religion at university, and just for him to say this is so ludicrous. And I would say I know it better than him, so I'm telling him what he's saying is bullshit, basically. And it is, and it's just pandering to his base and his Patreon funders. It's like Jordan Peterson as well, talking about all these Christian morals and just not recognising antiquity and everything like that. Like, I'm saying the basis of modern human rights, even though it takes elements from the US Constitution, which is a secular constitution, it's based on Cyrus the Great, 2,500 years ago. That's morals. And religion is invented by men, so it's not even like God has given us these morals. Humans wrote it. So these morals existed anyway. God didn't invent them. So that might have become a bit rambling at the end, so I'm sorry, but I just feel this just total bullshit. Let me know what you think. And I think just generally, just all this stuff about Judeo-Christian values just completely ignores history and is just trying to prop up your side. And also, let me know what you think. And yeah, cheers for watching.